Hello, guys. Welcome to Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African. I am S.I.K.A. Before I start today's episode, let me invite you to click on the subscribe button and to also activate the ring bell so that you don't miss out on the latest episode. What will you do if you are in a position where you give money to someone without having any information regarding how that money is being spent? Will you be okay continuing giving the same amount of money, sometimes even more, to that person without knowing exactly how your money is being spent? Or simply put, you wouldn't mind, not knowing, not having any means of knowing exactly how your money is being spent, where exactly your money is going? Well, presented that way, it may sound a bit weird, right? But let me rephrase and let me put the same question within a different context. As a citizen, would you like to know exactly how your tax money is being spent by the government? Aha. I guess now the question is relevant, right? Welcome to this new episode dedicated to discussing tax transparency. In the beginning of October this year, the Council on Economic Policies, in collaboration with the German Institute for Development and Sustainability, released their latest report on the most tax transparent countries in the world. Simply put, that study or that report aims to strengthen transparency and accountability in tax expenditures all over the world. So, in other words, that study is actually trying to answer that previous question: where exactly your tax money is going, how your government is spending or is using your tax money. And looking at the 2023 report, something astonishing actually caught my eyes. Guess what? This year we have one African country, in the top 10 most transparent countries across the world. And without any surprise, Benin is actually that country. According to the report, Benin ranks 8th globally and the first at the African level. But to what do we owe such an incredible and outstanding performance? Well, the Minister of Finance and Economy of the Republic of Benin has been implementing a lot and a series of reforms aiming at actually improving the country's tax administration system. And one of the key particularities of those reforms that the minister, has been trying to implement for over 5 years had a strong focus on digitization. So, what does it mean? Well, first, it means that here is an African country that was first cognizant of its limits. We have a country that actually knew about the necessity to improve its tax administration system. In so doing, they actually decided to start earlier, since 2016. And now, almost 10 years down the line, we are starting to see some noticeable improvement, being the eighth, most tax transparent country in the world, even before the USA, Italy, and other developed economies. The second very interesting aspect, other than starting earlier, is the digital aspect. It's very interesting to see that a country like Benin, which is smaller than Ivory Coast, smaller than Nigeria, smaller than Ghana, which is not even in the top 10 most performing African economies right now, to actually teach a very interesting lesson to those emerging African markets, such as the one I just, cited. It is very important to implement and to include digitization within a national tax system. Why? First, digitization helps reduce your reliance on cash. And why is that important? It is very important because sometimes what happens is you get some people, some individuals, some public servants that actually have too much and too wide access to public funds. And don't get me wrong, I am not trying to, to shame anyone here. I have no proof, but it is fact that you cannot guarantee someone moral integrity at 100%. There will always be room, for error and room for any mistake. So in a scenario or in a system where the cash collection system highly relies on cash-based transaction, the likelihood of corruption and mismanagement of public funds is very high. Unlike in a situation or in a context where you have a digital system that actually allows people, taxpayers, to perform their tax duty online with less human interaction, that also reduces the likelihood of corruption and misorientation of public funds. So in my opinion, I think this is one of the key elements that the Beninese authorities understood at the very earlier stage. So now that we have, a pretty good understanding of the recipe for success, what does it mean, for Benin? Other than being, the top most tax transparent country in Africa and the 8th most transparent country in the world, what are the other benefits here? What are the other key takeaways? Well, I can think of few key points here. The first benefit, is obviously that it gives the country a good representation worldwide and a good reputation. A good reputation, among investors, also a good reputation among creditors. And this is very important because although it does not mean that Benin is richer in terms of tax collection than the US or Italy, but it also means, or it actually means, on the other hand, that Benin is actually subject to the same high standards of transparency and accountability when it comes to the management of public funds, at least to some extent. And this is very good, you know. When something is good about an African country, we have to be vocal about it. Another key point is that it also improved the confidence in the country for management of public funds and public revenue. And this is also very important because whenever like applying for international funding or applying for like or trying to create a conducive environment for international and foreign investment, it is very good to have a good understanding of the tax system. And it is also very interesting from an investor perspective to know that whatever tax you are going to be paid are actually going to go into the right hands, are going to be well spent, and you as a taxpayer and tax contributor, you also get to see where your money is going. Another benefit is that it is also good for fiscal policies. And to me, this is the most important because when looking at the current fiscal ecosystem in Africa, you will see that tax collection, the percentage of tax collection is very low. Roughly, we're sitting at a 20 to 35% tax collection rate in Africa, where in developed economies in the US, in France, you have higher level, over 90%, because individuals, businesses, majority of them make sure that they are tax compliant and that they actually pay their taxes, according to the fiscal policies and the fiscal regulation, in place. While in Africa, it is quite difficult. Why it is difficult? Because first, we don't have a lot of formal business in Africa. Second, the few formal business, that are operating in Africa, like I said, sometimes tend to prefer dealing in cash-based system, which is very difficult, in terms of tracking, in terms of transparency, and etc. So for Benin to make such an outstanding, performance in terms of tax transparency, it is good for, to incentivize the government towards like designing better fiscal policies. It is also good for local taxpayers, for Beninese people, because unlike other African nationals, at least they get to know where their money is going. They get to know how the government is spending the money. Whether they agree with the fiscal expenditure policies, that's another question for another topic. But the point here is at least we are in a country, in an economy where the citizen know exactly where and how their money and their tax contribution, is being spent. So in conclusion, this is very excellent for Benin. And I strongly encourage the Minister of Finance and Economy, Mr. Wadani, to keep, pushing and keep implementing those groundbreaking fiscal policies. But on the other side, that's obvious. You can't be scoring good points all the time. There's obviously a drawback. The drawback here is to actually be careful. Beware, and be careful. This outstanding performance should not be a one-time good performance. And the local government must be cautious not to fall back into bad habits. You are clearly onto something good. You are clearly, onto something good. My advice will be to the Beninese authority to keep pushing, to keep up the good work, and to aim to becoming better. My wish to the Beninese authorities is to see them 10 years from now on being number one most transparent country in the world and leading the rest of Africa and the entire world into a better and a most transparent tax environment. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening to S.I.K.A Talks, the platform where strong realities always meet powerful perspectives. À bientôt.